Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Melanie and I am super jazzed to be here as always. It is seed starting day. Normally we would be starting on the 15th of March. Today is the 13th because it happens to line up with the new moon, so it seemed extremely appropriate. I'm out here in the greenhouse just getting a couple more containers, a few things that I think we might need. I'm trying out a different way to start our pepper and tomato seeds. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the channel Roots and Refuge, but Jess on there starts her tomatoes and her peppers in one larger container where she will seed like maybe 10-15 little tomato seeds, and then once they have germinated she will select out the most healthy looking plant and then repot that little seedling into its own individual container. I want to give it a shot because I traditionally have sowed seeds just in like these little guys or those little six-pack shell things. So I thought it would be cool to try sowing multiple seeds in a square container and then choosing the healthiest seedlings later on to transplant into the seed packs and then properly age them out that way. Yeah, so we're going to be grabbing some of these containers. We're going to head inside and plant our tomatoes and our peppers today, as well as a lot of herbs and flowers. There's a few different perennials that I got that are shrubs or bush type plants that need some longer germination time, as well as a longer time to get a bit hardier before I put them out here in the cold. Later on, you're going to see my seed starting station that I built. If you want to see how I built it or chit chat about the grow lights I'm using, etc., etc., I will link in the cards above here the vlog where I share that with you, as well as in the description below, so you can watch that vlog to get caught up for today's seed starting goodness. Like I mentioned in one of our other vlogs, Mom has created a really cute little thing to lock up our greenhouse, and I want to show you guys it. It looks like a carrot. So you just take it out of this. It's a carrot. It's got a little chain, and then it slides through the back of this piece and just through, oh god, the door handle. There we go. Yeah? Cute. I also mentioned that we saved some of the old seed packages for a little art feature, and this is what we ended up using them for. Mom did a really cool job, and I like the carrot. It's adorable. It's obviously a topic people discuss a lot would be sterile soil to start your seeds in. I'm not doing that. I understand the need to kill potential mites and such, but the idea of just making sure everything in the dirt that I'm using is dead in order to make the seeds live is counter to my want of regenerative soil. I just don't want to kill everything that's in the soil to start some seeds. I've started many seeds in not sterile soil prior to this, and I'm fine with my germination rate being slightly lower or potentially losing a few seeds. I'm not doing this for resale. This is a hobby garden at the moment where I happen to get a lot of food from. So it's not about, I don't feel the need to do that. I'm also not using a specific seed starting blend. I'm just using organic garden soil. This is only my second year gardening. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there with experience who emphasize those points. And maybe next year I will have changed my methodology around that. But for this year, I am just going to be using this guy. Especially because we're in a northern climate, I'm gonna have to pot up anyway fairly shortly. I didn't want to I don't know. We're going with just the regular potting soil. I'll let you know if I horribly regret my decision, but I wanted to be fully transparent with you guys. I am not sterilizing anything, the soil or the pots or anything, and it's not a specific seed starting mix. We'll see how she plays out, I suppose. But I'm excited to get started. Today we are doing not all of the seeds that we have to start inside. This is the group of seeds that are going to take around 8 weeks to be ready to go into the ground later on. We have also given ourselves 2 weeks extra because we want to harden off the starts in our greenhouse before we actually plant them out in the ground. So we are 8 weeks out from putting these plant starts into our greenhouse. We are not going to be putting anything into the ground until the end of May, and it is March 13th today. With that being said, I'm going to get my hands in the dirt and set up my trays. I'll show you guys how I do that, but then we're going to talk a little bit about the varieties I'm planting. I kept in mind that I have a shorter growing season than a lot of people because of the elevation I live at. We're between zone 7 and 8, so that in combination with our elevation, our last frost date's pretty late, and it's important to get some things seriously started inside if we're going to be growing anything outdoors. So we are going to put to the test our seed germination station, our grow lights, all of the prep work that I showed you guys in our last Tamtara vlog. Today is the day that I get to find out if I made some grave errors or if we are set up for success. This is the fun thing about gardening. There's like good risk, good reward. Sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes things work out great. I don't know. We're gonna be doing a lot of A/B testing this year, trying things out. And this is my disclaimer now. I think I mentioned this in every vlog. I'm not a professional gardener. I don't do this as, like, this is not my jam yet. I love gardening, I love plants, I've always loved plants. I've always had some type of garden, but on this scale and with this level of planning and production and having a grow station inside, expecting and hoping to actually get food off of this garden, there's a bit more pressure, there's a lot more planning, and I've now invested a decent amount of money into all of this. So fingers crossed that today will yield beautiful results. The first trays I'm going to get ready will be our little tomato guys. It's important, guys, do this with soil that you've already like pre-moistened. I've just dumped water in the bag itself. When soil is too dry and you try to water it, it'll actually wax the water off and it won't absorb it. It will also cause displacement of your seeds. Which you don't want. You kind of want them to stay where you put them, especially if you're planting multiple like we are in one cell. You don't want them getting pushed right up next to each other if you can avoid it. I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. Gardening is so exciting. There's like, it's the perfect level of effort and planning and the perfect level of execution. Like, you need both. You can't just, I mean, you could just wing it, I guess, but it's really helpful to have a little bit of a plan, you know? So it humors that planner in me. It lets me utilize my organization skills, I guess. And plus, it's a great way to spend a Saturday. I'm not compacting the soil really tight. I'm just pushing her down a little bit. Especially because this isn't a seed starting mix. I really want the seeds to be able to germinate and break through without having to fight against hard packed soil. So just a light tap down. I definitely know there's more efficient ways to do this, but you have to remember, I'm not doing this on any huge scale. I am just starting my backyard garden, really, and I don't really need to worry about the most efficient way to get this done because I really enjoy the process of it all. It's kind of part of the medicine of gardening, I think. So, while I know there are faster ways to fill these up, and there are really cool tables out there in people's greenhouses that allow them to filter the dirt through and all these cool tricks of the trade, I'm fine with this. First seeds going into the ground. Oh shit. Ah! Oh, okay. This is gonna be this one. First seeds in the ground. for our 2021 grow season are the Tiny Tim tomatoes. Little Tiny Tims. This is the only cherry tomato variety that we're going to be growing. So the theory is you plant a bunch in one little unit, and then when they start to germinate, you can actually take out and choose the best starts and then plant them into their individual ones later on. And then it means your 6-pack is all tight and there's plants growing in each cell and you're not missing some, and you've got options, so you can always choose the best looking ones. Or at least that's the game plan. Label right away. Put your little labels in right away. Tiny Tim, planted. Next up, we got our Manitoba tomatoes. Okay, we have the first seeds in the ground for the 2021 growing season. We've got all of our tomatoes, we've got our peppers, as well as our leeks. These are the ones that I wanted to plant multiple plants in one square of the tray so that I could weed out the weaker looking seedlings and then replant the strong ones in their own little cells later on once they've germinated. So, my friends, this vlog has now stretched over a few days. We ended up having family friends over when I was starting the seeds. I did manage to get all of the seeds that I needed to started except for one. The kiwi bower vine seed, which is just like kiwi grapes, needs to soak 24 hours before you plant it. As far as I know, none of these guys need darkness, utter darkness, to germinate, but they don't need to be under the germination or the grow lights until they have sprouted. So they are on the top of our germination shelf where I have my heating pad. Now I'm experimenting a little bit with the heating pad. I've never used one before. Flowers, herbs, and vegetables all germinate at very specific and different temperatures for optimal germination rates. The biggest thing I'm a little curious about would be our tomatoes and peppers. I have them on the same mat and it's at 21 degrees Celsius for the herbs and the flowers, and that's, I believe, cool for tomatoes and peppers. But my theory is if the herbs and everything like that germinate quickly or normally, once I take them off the germination pad, I can increase the heat so that the tomatoes and peppers would go. But 21 degrees Celsius is kind of like general for many different types of varieties of plants, except for the peppers and tomatoes, which need it quite warm. I don't know, maybe I'll update you guys on how I figure it out. I think I'm just gonna leave it at 21. Misting them when I'm watering them, because I don't think that you should bottom water until there's roots, right? I don't know. Remember how I told you guys I'm not a professional gardener? It's really funny to me that there's like this whole group of gardeners out there now who like will call themselves intuitive gardeners, which I get. I guess you are listening to your intuition. But in other words, it's just winging it. You're like, oh, I'm intuitively gardening. It's like you just don't know what you're doing and you're guessing, which is legit because that's what I do. But to be like, oh, it's intuitive, it's like, well, it's more like taking the best guess that you can and hoping it works out. I do think that gardening is interesting in the sense that you can, like, you have a lot of different types of gardeners. You've got the ones that follow the rules to a T. And then you kind of have this like new emerging subgroup of gardeners who are really intensely focused on things like companion planting and not planting one intense or one cluster of all lettuce and like blocking off their garden. And I think it's really fun that I've come into gardening at the time that I have, because I'm not one who's ever really felt the need to hold strict to any rules. So I don't have like the training to undo to embrace this new type of gardening. You know what I mean? Like I've not had a garden for 10 years where I have always block planted my food and vegetables. I have never done that. So it's really easy for me to jump on board with the intuitive gardening crew because I don't know what I'm doing anyway. So winging it is already what I'm doing. But it's hard. I feel for the gardeners out there who have like invested blood, sweat, and tears following these rules that they were told and taught and have believed to be necessary to have a successful garden. I both am really excited for them to feel liberated, and I also feel a little sad that they felt so restricted in that, like, in order to have a successful garden, they must follow these rules, you know? Okay, I made a potentially detrimental error for our kiwi bower harvest for 2021 growing season. I thought that they were supposed to soak in water for 24 hours and then could be directly planted into the soil, but they need to be soaked in water for 24 hours and then receive 90 days of stratification. So the bower kiwi or kiwi bower seeds are gonna soak for 24 hours, and I'll keep you guys updated on the stratification process if I research it and figure out if I can cheat that at all. I want to run you guys through a little bit of the other plants that we decided to go with this year. Thus far, this is about only half of the seeds we'll be planting. We have another batch that I'm going to start germinating around April, but these ones need to be started indoors for a significant period of time before our last frost date because it's still very cold here. We wanted to do our marigolds again. The marigold seeds we saved from last year. We collected them off of a few flowers that we let go to seed. If you're wanting to do any kind of seed saving, you just have to make sure that the flower or the fruit has an opportunity to fully mature on the vine, or as fully mature as you can allow it without it rotting or potentially losing the chance to harvest the seeds, so that they're developed and then you can save them. Some seeds need a little bit of processing, like pumpkins, for example. You have to make sure you get the coating and the layer off of them before you try and save those seeds. I believe the same thing applies to squashes. All of the seeds that we purchased this year are non-GMO heritage varieties with the intention of saving the seeds. It cuts down on you having to purchase seeds again the following year and can help kind of close the circle on the supply and demand, and really makes you a lot more self-sufficient when you can save seeds and then sow them again next year. So that's nice. It also kind of eases the pain of having to drop $120 on seeds each spring, you know? It's like an investment, a one-time investment, and if you can successfully save seeds, you're saving yourself a lot of money. So if you've not tried it, I would recommend trying it. I also got butterfly bush or milkweed. This one was because last year I really didn't plant a lot of flowers. I was really zoned in on the vegetable world, but I'm extremely interested and have always been interested in the medicinal properties of flowers, plants, herbs. So including things like milkweed or butterfly bush, whichever you call it, and some other flowers like the marigolds this year is kind of just like my fun way of playing around with the garden. It's also nice because it does obviously bring in butterflies and pollinators, and it's a beautiful plant. It's also perennial here. Dwarf jewel nasturtiums. I know that nasturtiums can be a great trap for aphids, and one of our beds where I'm planning on planting our tomatoes, I thought it would be cool to put some nasturtiums as a little bit of ground cover because tomatoes obviously grow tall. So we would have some exposed ground. I thought nasturtiums are obviously gorgeous, especially the jewel mixture where you have multiple different colors, and the flowers themselves are edible. They taste a little bit like horseradish. Wild bergamot, which is perennial here. It's also known as bee balm. Again, mainly planting this because it's a pretty flower. I wanted to grow more flowers. It's a great pollinator. It's perennial here. I love perennials. I'm trying to get some really nice perennials established so that it's not something I have to do every year. Obviously, it would save on time and money for seeds, etc., etc. Bee balm is also great. There's many medicinal uses, and I plan on doing a medicinal, mundane, and magical video all about bee balm. If you guys have not seen those videos, I'll link them to the description below. I think thus far I've covered lemon balm and lavender. It's just where I walk you through some of the fun folklore around specific plants, medical uses and mundane uses, for example, like skincare, DIY, those kinds of things. I will definitely be making a medicinal, mundane, and magical video about bee balm when harvest time comes. So again, hyssop is a perennial here. I wanted to start getting some of these herbs and perennials established in the ground and producing a lot. So this was the year I focused a lot on flowers and perennials and things that I would be able to plant and establish and then neglect for years to come. Because like I said earlier, I am intuitively a lazy gardener. I just think it makes a lot of sense to set yourself up to not have to maintain something, you know? But hyssop, the first thing I think of is its incredible immune boosting properties, often just from using it in teas. I'm really excited about this one. Wormwood. So wormwood is, again, like actually poisonous, and I'm not gonna lie, I got this seed with the intention of nurturing my inner child who wants to pretend that she is a witch who lives in the forest and grows poisonous, deadly herbs and brews all of these intense potions all the time, because there is a part of me who wants that life, and Wormwood does it for me. It is a perennial here. I got it because it has really nice, like kind of gray foliage. It's yellow flowers and it can grow to like 5 or 6 feet tall. It's definitely like a different looking herb. And I'm excited to just kind of incorporate it to help build the layers in the herb garden. Again, it is and can be toxic to other plants, so you have to be smart about where you put it. And for that reason, a lot of the time people will plant it in containers. I am going to be planting it in the ground. It might not be right in the bed, it might be beside the bed. I'll keep you guys posted with where I decide to actually put it. It's commonly used for its medicinal properties and has huge benefit in purging parasites. I don't have any parasites that I know of, but I thought it would be cool to establish a perennial that if I ever did have parasites, it would help with that. I pretty much bought anything that said it would be a perennial up to zone 8 because we get cold and it's hard to find perennials. Anything that produces a flower or anything that has medicinal properties that's a perennial and will last in my zone, I pretty much buy without much question. Next up is the Echinacea, which again is a perennial flower here. I didn't realize that so many herbs have different names, but Echinacea is also known as like blue coneflower, I believe. I'm sure you guys have heard of the medicinal benefits of Echinacea. Early settlers, Native Americans, have been using it for centuries, years. Broadleaf Sage, I believe this one might actually be variegated. It says it's perennial, but again, I don't think sage is quite perennial here. We might get 1 or 2 plants that pull through if they happen to be properly insulated, but I'm doubting that our sage plants from last year have made it through the winter. Obviously, sage is a culinary herb, but I like to grow a lot of it because I do use sage in ritual or spiritual sense, and I don't want to support the intense harvesting of white sage and sages that have now become endangered because overuse in the spiritual communities, right? So I have no qualms with using a culinary herb to smudge my house as opposed to supporting a very unsustainable way of harvesting sacred plants, you know? I'm excited to grow that one. I think it's variegated. I've got another type that's in the garden as well. Sage always have like this softest texture to the leaves, and I think they're just so lovely to look at. Oh yes, okay, so this is the other sage that I have. Looks like this. This one was specifically broadleaf. I don't know if they're the same. We'll see this year. I think this is going to be a bit bigger. I like those big soft leaves, especially if you take like Manchego cheese, wrap a piece of the sage leaf around it, and then just fry it in some butter or oil. So we're going to talk about chamomile real quick. Last year, I could not find chamomile seeds locally for the life of me. This year, I compensated for that and bought a lot because I was scared I was not going to be able to find them, and when I found them, I had a weird moment where I overbought them. But that being said, there are 2 types of chamomile. One of them is perennial, one of them is annual. Both of these varieties can be used medicinally. Roman chamomile is hardy to zone 5 and is considered a perennial and will be a good ground cover. It's a crawler. Obviously, we are not in zone 5. I bought this basically to see if I could potentially somehow make it last. Again, I'm skeptical because zone 5 is real different than zone 7 to 8, but I figured it was worth a try because I love chamomile and I would love to I have this vision of a hill covered in beautiful, cute little white and yellow flowers, but we'll see. It could probably just be an annual for me every year, which I'm still willing to do. That being said, Roman chamomile actually produces less flowers, so you do get the sprawling ground cover and you do get the perennial effect where it comes back year after year and you can continue to pick the flowers from it, and it can potentially self-seed, so it can multiply naturally and create more plants, kind of compensating for the fact that you get less individual flowers per plant. However, German chamomile, which is kind of the traditional stuff you're used to buying in stores, which is considered an annual, this stuff is typically grown for the flower production. It produces more flowers and it's great for teas. This is the chamomile you see kind of everywhere. And then I got winter thyme. This one I don't believe spreads. I think it spreads a little bit, but there are some types of thyme where they will spread a lot, like mint. I believe, don't take my word on it, I should probably look it up again before I plant this in the garden, but I believe this one doesn't spread as easily. Thyme is a classic kitchen herb for us here. So we have one plant out there from last year. I wasn't confident that it was going to make it through the winter because it was in an individual pot and not in the ground. So I'm not sure how protected its roots were. So I went ahead and got some winter thyme. It's beautifully dark. I love the look of thyme. It's very pretty to me. We also got rosemary in the ground. It's an annual in Canada. It gets too cold in most parts of the country for this to be a perennial. Obviously, rosemary is staple kitchen herb. It's a little annoying to start from seed. The germination rate on rosemary is a lot lower than most herbs, and it takes a while to germinate. So I find myself, whenever I plant it from seed, I pretty much think it's not going to germinate every time I do, and then it does germinate, and then I'm surprised, but it never germinates as much as I would like it to. So I plant a lot of rosemary to compensate for that. We use it in the kitchen. It's probably one of our primary kitchen herbs, but it's also, I'll do a magical, mundane, and medicinal video on it too, but it's also one of like the most versatile herbs used in herbalism and witchcraft. Peppers are not traditionally crops that you can grow in cold weather climates. They need it to be warm to germinate. They also need a lot of warm weather to ripen and a long growing season to produce peppers. That being said, King of the North peppers are reputed to be one of the best for northern climates. Still recommended to grow them in a polytunnel or some kind of sheltered space. I am going to be planting some in our garden bed itself where I'm planting the tomatoes, but I'll also be keeping a few in pots in the greenhouse to see if those ones do exceptionally well compared to the ones in the garden. When it's super ripe and red, it's supposedly very flavorful. I did choose this variety of pepper specifically because of how well it's said to do in cold climates. So we're gonna be doing a little bit of an A/B test this year. Since we're on peppers, I guess we're gonna go right to tomatoes. I chose 3 varieties of tomatoes. We got the Determinate Manitobas because I didn't want an Indeterminate because I need this fruit to produce in a fairly short season. Manitoba is kind of like a classic size. This is gonna be kind of like our one we use for salsas and canning and processing. So I'm hoping I get a good yield off of these. I've not grown them before, so it was important for me to get Determinate variety of this tomato so that I'm not growing a bunch of leaves and not getting a lot of fruit off of it. Our season is short, so we have to really pay attention to that. I said I wanted to do a lot of A/B testing this year. I did get one Indeterminate variety of tomatoes. However, it is specifically an early producing variety of Indeterminate tomatoes. So if you don't know the difference between Determinate and Indeterminate tomato plants, Determinate means it's a bush variety and it will stop growing at a certain size. It just kind of caps for the foliage growth and then it will start to produce fruit. Indeterminate means it will just continue to grow and grow, which also means it continues to produce more fruit and more fruit, but it tends to produce it a lot later in the season because the energy of the plant is going to growing the plant. So we've got the Indeterminate variety, Early Girl. I just kind of want to test the name. I want to know if this Indeterminate is going to be productive up here, if we have a long enough season to grow potentially some Indeterminate varieties. I have not grown up here before, so I need to kind of feel it out. I know we have a short season, but you can always push the boundaries a little bit, so it's going to be cool to see the yield comparison from the Determinate Manitoba tomatoes to the Indeterminate Early Girls. So they're called Early Girls for a reason. They set fruit quite early, but they are indeterminate, so we shall see. And then we got our Tiny Tim. Got Tiny Tim because we were looking for a cherry tomato that we could have just in a couple containers on the deck. It's nice to have something that you can just pick at, and Mom liked Tiny Tims. So we're just gonna see how these do up here. Cherry tomatoes, I don't feel the need to invest in choosing the right cherry tomato, as I'm not really intending to can with them. We might do some like sun-dried, store them in olive oil kind of thing, but it's not really like the main crop of tomatoes. So it's a little bit more willy-nilly when you're choosing the cherry tomato variety. The last seeds that we planted on Saturday were our blue leeks. I opened this package upside down, which is annoying because it's actually able to be resealed, so that's silly of me. That being said, these are a cold hardy variety of leek out of France. Takes about 120 days, apparently. It's pretty squat and bulky. We got this type because they're notoriously good in cold weather. They can handle a frost or two. depending on how intense it is. They can handle a frost or two, and they're supposedly really good at storing over winter. Again, I've not grown a lot of leeks, and I've not eaten a lot of leeks. So this was just kind of like a fun cold weather crop that could apparently do really well up here. So I want to see how it grows. If it grows really well, I'm gonna have to learn how to cook and eat leeks. That is all that I planted on March 13th, so last Saturday. We do, like I said, have probably about 20 other things that we've got to get going, things like pumpkins, squash, cucumbers, all of that stuff we are going to be starting in April. I will make a vlog about starting those. All of the plants are in the soil and planted. I've got the kiwi bower seeds soaking overnight, and then I'll get them in some tissue with some water under cover so they're not hit by the light for 90 days. Didn't think about that. Sounds like I'll be planting those in June. Ripley and I are gonna go on a hike. For now then, guys, I will see you in the next Tamtara vlog. As always, live long and prosper. Ripley says goodbye, and I will see you all next time. Bye.